I'm joined on Not the Andrew Marr Show by Alex Mays, who is on the steering committee of Transform, which is going to be having its founding conference in November. But before we talk about all that, Alex, just wondering, can you tell us what Transform's up to at the Labour Party conference?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Crispin. So in a nutshell, we plan to hold a mock funeral for the Labour Party. So essentially the idea around it is to symbolise its death as a political party, which is in any way democratic, socialist, or for the working class. So what our activists will be doing is carrying a coffin from the entrance of Albert Dock to outside Labour Party conference, which I think is at the ACC. And lay dead roses, 20 of them, one for each progressive policy that the party has either U-turned or watered down since Keir Starmer became leader 3 years ago. I think, well, we think this will be a really powerful, quite theatrical action, which will lay an old, dead political party to rest, and welcome the birth of a new one in the shape of Transform.
Right. Okay. So it's a symbolic kind of out of the old and in with the new. Um, so I mean, with Starmer, they've just won this by-election in Scotland. How I mean, Labour might be finished in terms of what its policies are and its whole foundation, what it's founded for, what it was all about originally. But it's doing okay and well in the polls. What would you say the dangers are of a Starmer government? How damaging do you think the Starmer government would be?
I think it could be very damaging. I think, we're seeing a lot at the moment, a lot of wishful thinking from, the sort of get the Tories out crowd, that somehow a Starmer government is going to be more radical than what it's saying, which, I think we all know is complete nonsense. As it stands, really, Labour are occupying this sort of like Tory under David Cameron kind of vibe from 2010 to 2015. So what I think we can all expect is a continuation of austerity, and a hostile environment as well for marginalised communities. And what we're seeing as a result of that is the Tories are moving even further to the right to occupy that space. And I think as well, like, it's not only that, like the authoritarian way as well that the Labour Party runs its own machinery should be a sign of how they will run this country. We've already seen that they've said they're going to let the Public Order Act, which effectively bans peaceful protest, right, to bed in. And I think that will be the case for a lot of other policies as well, where it will sort of limit our human rights and our freedoms. And when you look at the our wider society and our planet as well, like, at this time, it's probably the most it's ever been in danger. And we're in need of this radical and meaningful change. And we ultimately have a Labour Party that is refusing to do anything under its self-imposed fiscal rules. And the weirdest thing about all of this is that it only seems to be that when it suits them. Like, on the one hand, they'll say, oh, we wish we could afford to feed hungry kids with free school meals, or support families, in poverty by scrapping the 2-child benefit cap. But there's, and they'll say there's no money left, but then a few days later, then commit to spending billions on war machines. And the thing is, for me, like, politics is about priorities, and it's become very clear what Labour's are. And yeah, like, that could be really damaging. Like, we're already seeing it, like, across the Atlantic in the US, we're seeing it play out with Biden at the moment, that he's not been able to deliver enough for people. And what we're seeing is Trump has a real chance of getting back in 2024, which, is frankly just terrifying. When you look at the Tories as well, like, I think we can all agree that they're probably on course to get absolutely battered in the next general election. To what degree, we don't know yet. But it's natural. Like, what will happen is they will regroup as an opposition, and they'll look to be, and what they'll be aiming to be is back in power by the end of the decade, just like Trump is for next year. And we've seen, like, even this week, haven't we, like with the Tory party conference, the kind of ideas and the kind of rhetoric that were sort of on the fringes of the Tory party, they were always there, like the sort of more National Front, Britain First, UKIP, Brexit Party kind of ideology. And that's becoming mainstream within the Tory party. And you're seeing these figures within the Tory party sort of jostling for Sunak's position, because we probably expect that he'll have to step down after the next general election if he does lose. And like can you imagine like a Tory party led by Suella Braverman or even Nigel Farage, who we saw at the conference this week? I don't think any of us would be safe in that scenario. So what I would sort of say is that by supporting or voting for a Starmer Labour government, in the long term, you're ultimately endorsing a Tory one.
Right, very interesting way of looking at it, and also sort of looking at America as an example of where we might head, if you know Biden's a similar person to Starmer. Now, there's a lot of confusion on the left at the moment because there are quite a few different groups and parties that are set up. Obviously, there's been the Peace and Justice Project. Transform has brought a few parties together. Then there's other parties outside that, but we won't get into that. But this week, the For the Many network is being launched in Liverpool. What do you make of that? Is it able? Can you work with them? Is it something you're joining in with? What's your thoughts on the For the Many network?
Yeah, so when you look at things historically on the left, like we've sort of been our worst own enemy at times, like with all the sort of infighting, the sectarianism that exists between different groups and organizations. And you mentioned with what we're doing with Transform that we kind of wanted to change that, bring together different groups and individuals from across the movement together to form a united new left party. And what I see with For the Many is that they're kind of doing a similar thing, but to form a network, which isn't going to be a party of sorts, but is going to act as a means to bring different organizations together, you know, because I think there are a lot of organizations out there that might necessarily not be convinced by the idea of a new left party. Everyone has the right to their own opinion on that, but I think that any project that is trying to bring the left together has to be welcomed. You know, you mentioned, you know, I think you got Ian Hodson on your show
Yeah,
today. He
yeah.
backs, you know, he backs our call for a new left party, and we are planning to have people from Transform supporting their founding event on Monday. And I have no doubt that we'll be working constructively with them moving forward. Have no doubt about that.
And you know the other thing is obviously, as I said at the beginning, you've got a founding conference on November the 25th in Nottingham. Uh, can you tell us what to expect at that?
Yeah, so I think
This is for Transform, just because we were talking about something. This is for Transform, yeah.
yeah, this is for Transform. So yeah, we're as you said, we have a founding conference on November 25th in Nottingham. We're confirming a venue very soon. And sort of the few things that supporters can expect, really, like a major part of it really is ratifying the party's constitution. This will essentially set out what kind of party we are and how we're organised to ultimately enable us to bring about change. So our supporters are currently submitting amendments, comments on like the draft document that we produced. And we're planning to discuss and debate that over the next few weeks in online meetings before we produce this sort of final version of the Constitution through discussion, amendment, and voting at the founding conference. And from there as well, we'll then be able to be in a position to register the party with the Electoral Commission, which is really, really important. And there are also just some plans to have initial discussions around policy. We're planning to have some political workshops as well. And we want to have a few speakers dotted throughout the day to inspire and galvanize people into action as well. And we don't want this to be like other political events you see. Like I think we saw quite a lot where people are just sort of talked at for hours on end. We don't want it to be like that at all. We want it to be like truly quite engaging, exciting, and ultimately led by our supporters. That's the most important thing to us.
To follow up that interview, I've got Ian Hodson, who's speaking in a personal capacity. How are you doing, Ian?
I'm doing all right, Chris, but it's been a while, isn't it?
Yeah, good to see you. Are you at home? You're not at
No, I'm in
Liverpool.
Liverpool, mate. I'm doing the World
You're
Transform, don't I?
Oh, I
Uh,
like your room looks quite smart there. Right, okay, I won't say anything about that. Yeah,
Premier,
anyway,
Premier Win, mate. You know,
come
obviously
you in.
equality. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, you get that one. Yeah, okay. Well, look, what I want to talk about is the For the Many network, because as I was saying in that interview with Alex Mays, there are a lot of different groups that have been set up, like Peace and Justice Project, Transformed a New Party. There's a lot of ideas going around. How is For the Many network going to work within that?
I mean, first off, I mean, I thought that interview with Alex was very, very good. I thought, I mean, obviously, he come across very well, and I think some of the comments that he was making were absolutely spot on. Just as I thought John Dunn was when he was doing his newspaper review, and obviously Jackie too. I mean, the idea behind this network is to try and bring and organise, firstly on the left, but not just around the left. The idea is to take politics to the streets, to get people's opinions. You know, I'm fed up with being told that my priorities are the people coming across in small boats. When actually the people, who I represent, their priorities are actually, being able to afford food, being able to make sure they can keep warm in the winter. Those are the priorities of the people I talk to, not the priorities that these politicians keep banging on about. I mean, I've never come across anybody who says I want to demonize a migrant, but every day I'm told that that's our priorities. I mean, and the idea of this network is to talk about the real issues that we face, and give a platform to those policies which in politics now, which is we're stopped from talking about. I mean, we can't talk about renationalisation. I mean, it's a heresy to talk about the idea that we take water or electricity or gas back under national control. But for me, they talk about how they're going to make these changes in our society politically, but you can't control what you don't own. But we don't have that discussion, do we?
No. So what? But what's the what? How's it going to operate the For the Many network? Can you tell us about that?
So the aim is to try and set up hubs across the country. We will hold what people would recognise as a form of a constituency party, but obviously it won't be a constituency party. It'll be a hub. But obviously we'll be talking about the agenda that we feel is important to us and planning campaigns in the communities. We want to get to the point where those hubs are calling for people's parliaments, holding people parliaments in the local community where people will be able to come along from the general public. We would be asking them from our street stalls to identify an issue that they thought was relevant locally, that would make a difference to their lives, a national issue which would make a difference to their lives, and one of the principles that we believe would benefit all of our lives too. We'll be asking them to submit those questions. We'll be selecting a speaker on the night of a People's Parliament. We'll be selecting the questions on the night of the People's Parliament, and we'll debate those questions. And at the end of it, we'll come out with what the people's priorities in that community are from the actual people. That's the aim of it. And alongside that, what we want to do is skill people up with how do you lobby your council, how do you lobby your MP, how do you make sure that the issues that people really want to get addressed are able to get into the media, get onto the radio, and give them skills and the ability to do that, and build an independent media network alongside of that too. So when we have those people's assembly or when we have those street stalls, we'll be able to promote that on social media to get our voices actually out there so they can't ignore us anymore. And if we build that network and we create the opportunity within trades councils, within the campaign groups that already exist, promote the issues. Like yesterday, I was at the Liverpool Women's Hospital march, trying to defend that hospital, which is so much under threat, which is so needed by the community, but obviously so needed by women. There should be more women's hospitals, and we keep hearing the discussions, don't we, about the idea that governments want to invest in certain parts of the community, but yet there's an opportunity to invest in a women's hospital, but yet they're choosing to downplay it, move it, and make it smaller. and just integrate it into somewhere else. It's a specialist hospital for women.
Right. We'll be covering that. We've got footage of that later on as well in the show. No, you know, the party political side of it is where I get a bit confused with the For the Many network. It's not a political party. That's been something that's been spelled out pretty much. But there is a opening with all parties. I mean, it's welcoming to Labour members as well as other parties. Can you explain how that might work in a say a general election scenario? How will For the Many network be speaking out on the general election, which is probably about a year away from now?
Obviously, in different parts of the country, you know, different hubs will have different, you know, aims when it comes to the general election. What we won't be doing as a national organisation is saying you must vote for this party or you must vote for that party. I mean, that would be taking away the essence of what we're trying to do, which is make people the priority of politics. We want to bring people back into politics, so it must be done on a local basis. Where, you know, if there's I mean, listen, if I was in Islington, I'd be voting for Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, if I was over at Heathrow, I'd be voting for John McDonnell. If I was in Brighton, I'd be voting for Carol Lucas. If I was in Glasgow, I'd be voting for Chris Stevens. So, I mean, there's all of those different, you know, people that would represent our class interests, in my opinion. And depending on where you live in the country, you may have a candidate that you believe is going to represent the interests of you and your community. And I don't think it's for anybody to dictate how they should vote. But I think, you know, obviously, if parties sign up to the principles that we're organising around, then I think that should give some guidance to people who are looking who to vote for in a general election. I mean, one of the reasons why I support the idea of a New Left Party is because there has to be an alternative to what we're being offered between, you know, a Conservative and Labour Party, which are so aligned on politics and policies that you really can't tell the difference about what they're going to deliver for anybody. So I think it's really, really important that there is a party, if you want to play a part in democracy, that you can go out and vote for. Because my fear is that with nobody being able to choose between the two parties, they will do what John was suggesting and not take part in a vote. I mean, I spoilt my ballot paper at the council election because I had a choice between a Tory or a Labour person, and I couldn't vote for either because they don't represent my interests or the class that I belong to. But I do think that we have a right to take part in a vote. 204 years ago, we started on our march to democracy. Yeah, we've won the right to vote, but we don't seem to have won the right to choose, you know, a government that represents our interests. So, I mean, the aim of this is to build on all of those things that we've done before, whether it's from the Chartist movement, whether it's what happened at Peterloo, you know, all the way through our history. The only time we have succeeded in making any change is when we can stop, you know, the division within our own movement, the division on our own side, and come together around a set of objectives that we absolutely can all organise around. And that's why, you know, for me, this is a really exciting, it's a really ambitious project too. But it's an exciting project because it is about working and not having any preconceived ideas about what people should or shouldn't do. It's really about getting people back involved, delivering and developing activism within our communities. And when I talk about the types of meetings, what we also want to do is we want our meetings to consist of talking about working class history, you know, which is often ignored. You know, talking about all of those things that we've done as a working class, which you don't get to hear about at school, and many people don't ever get to hear about in their lives. And we want these hubs to be a centre for that. They want them to be, you know, talking about the things that we've done, what we've achieved, you know, the campaigns that we've run, and understanding who we are, you know, because we're always told what to expect and what we can do. But actually, we can achieve so much more when we understand who we are and where we've come from and what we've done. And we've done amazing things.
So just to get on the practical side of it, you got the launch tomorrow in Liverpool. What is there a next thing planned after that for people in other areas of the country?
I mean, basically we we launched on Tuesday. Our Twitter feed's going well. I think we're up to nearly 1,000 people. If you haven't followed us, please follow us and keep up to date with the information. But we've had over 300 people request to get involved already, which obviously we're quite pleased about, considering it's only been a couple of days and we haven't actually officially launched yet. We've got a number of meetings set up with a number of organisations to talk about how we can work together and how we can unify our aims and objectives. So yeah, there will be further meetings. We'll probably call a Zoom meeting with all those people that have signalled their wish to take part, and then we can start, the process of putting these hubs together. I mean, because we have got a number of hubs already that have started up, and obviously now we're making the official launch, and trying to see how big we can make this. I mean, one of the things for us is that we recognise that this is something that will enable us to come together around the ability to actually talk about the things that actually matter, but not just talk to ourselves. Go on the streets and talk to people, run street stalls, interviewing people, asking them, does politics work for you? Has what happens in the general election had an impact on your life, good or bad? What are the changes you want to see? What would make your life better? Imagine having those conversations, imagine having those conversations with people on the streets, and then telling them that actually, we can talk about these things. And if we actually implemented these things, do you know what difference that would make to our lives? Not having excrement in your water, having instead of the NHS and the social care and the health service, putting out this propaganda that we're getting too old so we can't afford our NHS, we can actually have those real conversations with people, and they can get a better understanding, because they're not going to get it in the mainstream media. And I mean, like one of the first speeches I ever gave to conference was about the 1381 peasants' revolt, because what I was trying to explain to them was, we never had a mainstream media then that we could get our message across. We had to go out and talk to individuals, and we had to organise. And if we talk to people, it's amazing the difference that you see when you tell them what the alternative could look like, and what happens when, as a class, we stand together.